there's been a lot of controversy over BRICS. One of the reasons is that there was talk some time back about BRICS currency. The US President Donald Trump took great offense to it, and he said that he would impose some huge tariffs on anybody who wants to do this kind of de-dollarization, as it was called. India, of course, has been saying that they are not interested in de-dollarization. At the same time, several of these countries, and not just these countries, several countries have been trying to make bilateral transactions within their own currencies. Even though our tariffs are going to go up, I mean, tariffs for exports into the US, which is, one of our largest markets, I think we may still have an edge compared to other countries. Also, every country is trying to do this kind of negotiation with the US.
Hello and welcome to the Secretariat. This week, Prime Minister Modi's outreach to Africa and South America, a looming trade deadline with the US, and what the Tel Aviv-Tehran ceasefire means for India. To unpack the geoeconomics of it all, we have Sushma Ramachandran, senior journalist and columnist. Hello, ma'am. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Prime Minister Modi is on an 8-day, 5-nation trip to Africa and South America. Expectations are high. This is the longest diplomatic tour he's embarked on in the past 10 years. Do you think it will translate into concrete economic trade ties for India?
I'm not very sure whether it will translate into economic and trade ties, which we already have with these countries. But I think it will translate into a great deal of goodwill for India among these countries, which are, as everyone has talked about, that this is really a trip to the global south. He's going to Ghana, Trinidad, Argentina, Brazil, and Namibia. So these are all countries that we would characterize as being part of the South. And these are countries which have been long-time trade partners of India. Of course, there would be a certain amount of acceleration in economic and trade ties. And that, I think, this visit will definitely give a push to that. But we also have to see the background of our ties with these countries. Now, you look at Ghana. Ghana is a country with which India has had relations, very close relations with, from the time of Jawaharlal Nehru, when President Nkrumah, I'm afraid I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but the very famous Ghanaian president, who was part of one of the founders of the non-aligned movement. And therefore, India and Ghana have had ties ever since then. Now, the Prime Minister has already started his visit to Ghana, and it is a very rare thing that a head of state comes to greet a visiting dignitary at the airport. And President Mahama actually went to the airport to greet Prime Minister Modi. So that's an evidence of the very close ties between India and Ghana. And of course, they have entered into certain comprehensive agreements. They've entered into a comprehensive partnership. So that is definitely going to increase the collaboration in these two countries, which is being looked at in the area of pharmaceuticals, in the areas of information technology, and also in defense and cybersecurity. And Ghana has also been very vocal in supporting India against terrorism, especially after the Pahalgam attacks. So this is something that also we have to take into account. So Ghana-India ties are already close. They're likely to increase. By the way, we must remember that the two major imports we have from Ghana are cocoa and gold. But we are also importing from them some other natural resources. But these are very important, important items that we are importing from them. So Ghana also has certain economic problems. It's a highly indebted nation, and India is likely to provide more and more support. Now we go on to Trinidad, which is a very tiny country, but Trinidad is important because of the Indian diaspora. Nearly half of Trinidad's population is of Indian origin, because in the mid-19th century, these indentured laborers came from India, and they worked there. And now, of course, Trinidad has become one of the wealthiest nations in the Caribbean, and we are importing. They have tremendous energy resources. We are importing and going to likely to import more liquefied natural gas from them, petroleum products. So it's a very important country on the economic side, but also from the cultural side, the diaspora. And now, of course, Argentina. Argentina is a country, in fact, it's mentioned over there, is the news reports that, no prime minister has done any bilateral for the last over 50 years. But the fact is that Prime Minister Narasimha Rao did go to Argentina in 1995, but technically it was not a bilateral visit. He went to attend the Group of 15 summit over there. And but again, with Argentina, we have had very good ties. Argentina again is a country with whom we want to increase our economic ties. Our, I think, trade ties are about $5 billion is our the level of trade that we have just now. And also, what is going to be interesting is that Prime Minister Modi will be meeting the new president, who is a great favorite of the U.S. President Donald Trump. He went recently to Washington, and there was a great deal of bonhomie. So this is a man who is a great supporter of Trump, and Trump is also very fond of him. So that would be quite interesting. Now, of course, coming to Brazil, Brazil is a country with which we are part of, BRICS, and we have again a very deep ties with Brazil, economic ties, and Namibia again is a country with whom we have had ties in the during the anti-colonial struggle of Namibia. India was with it, and recently, of course, Namibia has been in the news because we have brought these cheetahs from Namibia and released them in India. So there's that kind of cooperation also.
You mentioned the BRICS summit. So, what are our hopes and expectations from that this year?
Yes, of course, BRICS, everyone is looking at. I think probably the whole world is looking at it. On the positive side, of course, people are look at it as another. It creates a multipolar world instead of having just a unipolar world. You have these countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which form the original BRICS, and they have now included Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So they have expanded the membership. But the original membership is these countries from whom the acronym comes. Uh, this particular summit is trying to keep on a low key. They're going to talk about artificial intelligence and climate finance and green energy. These are very relatively innocuous things. But the thing is that there's been a lot of controversy over BRICS. One of the reasons is that there was talk some time back about BRICS currency, and the US President Donald Trump took great offense to it. And he said that he would impose some huge tariffs on anybody who wants to do this kind of de-dollarization, as it was called. India, of course, has been saying that they are not interested in de-dollarization. At the same time, several of these countries, and not just these countries, several countries have been trying to make bilateral transactions within their own currencies. India, for instance, of course, has a rupee trade with Russia going back to the days of the Soviet Union. But India is also trying to have rupee transactions with other countries using the UPI mode. Malaysia, for instance, the UAE, for instance. So we have some agreements now in place for that. But everybody's trying to keep it kind of low key and not talk of de-dollarization. The third thing that is significant about this summit is the fact that neither is the Russian President Vladimir Putin attending, and now, of course, the Chinese President Xi Jinping will not be meeting. So the prospect of a summit between or a meeting between Modi and Xi is quite likely will not take place. So to that extent, the drama of the BRICS summit has been reduced.
Going back to the drama in the global north, the July 9th trade deal deadline is looming. So, do you think India and US will manage to strike a mini trade deal before the deadline?
That's a $64,000 question, honestly. Um, First of all, uh, the two sides have, both India and the US seem to have hardened their stances. I should say actually India has hardened its stance because the US has already been saying that they want access to the agriculture and dairy sector in our country. That is kind of a red line for India. Because we have so many millions of subsistence farmers, and we don't want to harm their interests by allowing free import of grains and other items which are produced very cheaply. I mean, a country like America gives huge subsidies to its own farmers, agriculture subsidies, and therefore their produce is made at a very very cheap cost, and they want to dump these products in our market. Similarly, on the dairy front, I mean, we have in this country, we've got cooperatives, we have very small dairies who join together to form the huge companies like Mother Dairy and Amul, but they're coming from these very small farms, these cooperatives. But in America, you have the milk industry is very highly corporatized. So again, their costs are very low, and their products they want to bring onto our market. So this is a issue that, as I said, the Indian government is now apparently taking a hard stance. At the same time, there are areas in agriculture that we can open up. One of the reasons being that they are scared that they are losing the Chinese market, and they want to shift their product to India. Maize, that is corn, is another product. So this is the agriculture and dairy is an area where there is going to be a lot of tough negotiation. It is possible that India says, all right, let's open up in a certain way, give you certain quotas, and therefore we will allow it. But it is also possible that there will be no deal. So I find it very difficult to answer your question.
And then a follow-up tough question: what about after July 9th? Like once either the deal happens or doesn't, but Trump has indicated that there will be no extension of the tariff pause. So what happens after that?
Yes. Well, of course, if we do not, get any proper deal, any worthwhile deal, then Trump is going to levy heavy tariffs on Indian products. But it has to be remembered that these are not the only products that we are, going to be exporting to the U.S. And also, there are high tariffs being imposed on other countries also. And one of our competitors, of course, is China. And so we do anticipate that there is going to be a gap. Even if our tariffs are high, their tariffs will be even higher, and we will therefore have a competitive edge. Now, the latest news is that in terms for Vietnam, they're imposing a 25% tariff, and yet the US is going to be allowed to export duty free. It's a very strange kind of a trade deal. I don't know if this information is correct, but it has been reported in the newspapers. So, we might have an edge even over a country like Vietnam, which has been, highly competitive as far as we are concerned. So even though our tariffs are going to go up, I mean tariffs for exports into the U.S., which is one of our largest markets, I think we may still have an edge compared to other countries, because also every country is trying to do this kind of negotiation with the U.S. And so therefore you're going to have a situation where it's a very strange going to be a very strange situation with odd tariff levels with each countries. I mean, even Canada, for instance, is having a problem. And I think in the long run, I wonder how these tariffs can be sustained, because it is going to have put a great deal of inflationary pressures on the American economy, and consumer inflation is going to probably be very politically unwise for the Republican Party.
Taking a step back, in the last episode, you'd mentioned that the ceasefire between Iran and Israel was a fragile peace. So, do you think this ceasefire will hold? And what is the likely scenario in the future? And what implications would that have for India?
It is definitely a fragile ceasefire. Iran is, I mean, there are so many conflicting versions of the extent of damage that has been done to Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, there are some versions which say that they have completely, destroyed their capabilities, and it will take them years to come back to it. There are others who say that yes, you have destroyed some to some extent, but they can rapidly bring it up once again. There are still third versions which say that a lot of those materials were taken away from these particular sites before the bombing took place, and therefore they are not that badly off as you would expect. At the same time, even if their nuclear facilities are not badly hit, they have definitely the Israelis have managed to hit their military leadership. That's an area that is, an area of great concern for Iran, because the top levels of the military leadership have been assassinated or killed due to bombings. So, the way forward, the way forward for Iran is very difficult. So when a country finds itself in that kind of a bind, and a country like Iran, which is an aggressive country, they tend to take strong measures. And it is possible that Iran would like to take some, I mean, of course, they would like to, but it is possible that they may take some strong measures against Israel. Now, if you have, when you talk about the impact on India, if you have any kind of a conflict between Iran and Israel, it definitely affects world oil markets, because Iran is a major oil producer. Even though there are sanctions on Iran, it has been supplying oil largely to China. And to that extent, the pressure on the rest of the world's oil supply has been less. So it will immediately, as happened right at the beginning of the Iran-Israel conflict, oil prices had shot up. Now, I think that would be the first fallout of any Iran-Israel war. And that is something that is worrying for India, because we import, 85% of our requirements. And therefore, we would naturally have to contend, although our availability of oil is there's plentiful availability of oil. We can import oil from the countries that we are talking about. There are West African countries, which are Nigeria, which are supplying oil. There are countries in Latin America which are supplying oil, Venezuela. But the problem is the price. Our costs would go up tremendously. So that would be one major impact, the major impact for us. And that is definitely something that is worrying.
Thank you for your time, ma'am. Thank you for going on this geoeconomic world tour with us.
Thank you.